Alright guys, welcome to the first test game for Nodal Wars. And you got two sides. Got one side with a couple fighters that are multi-form, so they can transform into robots and hybrids, guardian modes and stuff like that. So this will be one side with an anti-aircraft mech with a combat multi-purpose heavy-duty mech, and then a close-in combat mech will be on one side, and the other side is going to have 6 units. You're going to have a pair of fighters from CAV, a pair of tanks also from CAV, and a pair of assassin mechs also from CAV. And out of your view over here to the side, I have some materials. I have my cheat sheets and the stat sheets for the different units, and so we'll go ahead and put these on and kind of get started and give an idea of how things work. Just a real quick kind of overview and let you see. So to start out, each side is going to roll 2 dice, 2d6. I'm going to roll them over here. You won't be able to see it, but those guys got an 8, these guys got a 6. So those guys get to go first, or they get to choose. So they either get to move one of their squadrons, so that's going to be one squad over there, then the mechs are going to be another squad, or they can let the other player go first. I think what they'll do is they'll go ahead and let this player go first, just because they're out of range and they might be able to get some shots in and things like that. So these guys, these tanks over here, can't see anything, and they get 2 actions. Every unit gets 2 actions. So they move 7, so they can go 7 with 1 action and shoot, or put themselves on Overwatch, or they can go 14 and try to move into place. These guys are going to go 14. And when they do go faster than their normal speed, they also what you consider boosting. So I'll put a token out here for each one, and basically this says these guys moved faster than their normal allotment. I'm going to turn them this way a little bit so they can shoot at stuff when it comes in, so it's a little bit harder to hit them than it would be normally. Those tanks are pretty hard to hit because they're pretty quick and maneuverable in the first place. So now it's these guys' turn, and I'm going to move their fighters. So they have 2 actions. With fighters and aircraft, similar, you have to use 1 action always to move. So you got 1 action where you could either try to evade fire or shoot the other target, but you always have 1 action where you have to move regardless. So if you have veterans, they have an additional action that gives them a little more leeway in what they can do. So these guys, before you move a fighter, you always turn them. You can turn them up to 90 degrees, and then you make their first move. These guys can go 12. So their first move, they have to go from 6 to 12 speed. So they're going to turn and come over here. And they are in range to shoot at the tanks for their missiles. So they have their first move, then they're going to go ahead and shoot. So missiles use a D8 to shoot. Each one of these guys has 4 missiles. So what I'll do is I'll write down, usually I have a sheet for each one, but in this case I'm just going to write them down on a sheet of paper because I know a lot of the stats in my head. So both of them are going to shoot 4 missiles. Now these guys have a target rating of 8 normally, which is how hard they are to hit. They get a bonus of 1 because they boosted, so it's 9. The fighters, on the other hand, have a gunnery of 2. So they need to get a 7 or an 8 to be able to get that 9 to be able to hit. And they each fire a volley of 4 missiles. So they're going to shoot 4 at each tank. So the first tank got 1 hit. And the other tank, so each tank will get 1 hit. And those missiles do 9 damage. The tanks can take 10. So they'll be able to survive as long as they're not damaged too much. So the armor on these things, though, are very weak. They only have an armor of 4 and 1. So you have 2 armor ratings. You have 4, which is 4 better, means you do 4 full damage. 1 means 1, 2, or 3. If you roll 1, 2, or 3, you're going to do half damage. So the missile on this one, it's going to do full damage, and the other one's going to do full damage. So each one of these took 9 damage. So I'm going to write that down real quick. Normally I would mark on the sheets, but since I'm doing this by myself, because frankly I got some time today and figured I might as well punch this out. So both of those guys take 9 damage, so they're still alive, just barely. So now it's these guys' turn, and the fighters are kind of exposed out there, and they've already used their actions. So these guys can move out there and try to intercept them. These fighters move 13. So each one's going to turn. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, one thing. These fighters are supersonic, so that's their first move. But then they always have a secondary move that they make after the fact. And that secondary move has to be their full movement of 12. They can't choose to go half. Because they're supersonic and they're so fast, they have to make the full 12 movement on their second move. So these fighters are going to turn and obviously going to respond and go after these guys. And 30-inch range or so. So let's see, these guys. So they're out of range for their short-range missiles. So they moved 1, and these guys can see them. So their secondary move, they'll be able to get closer, but they won't be able to shoot on their secondary move. So they have an action left. What they can do is they can boost a little bit, but that's not going to do much good. So they're just going to move their second move, so they're over closer to these fighters and also out of view of these guys. So they're in a little bit safer place for next turn to try to take out those fighters. If they get a go first, if they win initiative, they'll have a good chance of doing some heavy duty damage to those fighters. So those guys moved. Now you alternate the activation. The other side gets to go. These guys aren't going to be able to really see anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and move these guys. Kind of have them go forward so they can't see anything. It's debatable on whether I want to have them do double move or overwatch. You can spend an action to put them on overwatch. If I do so, I have also tokens for overwatch. And all these tokens are actually used from Sedition Wars box set, but I'll make some eventually for the game. So all those guys have Overwatch. So something crosses their view. Next turn before they activate, they get a chance to shoot. They'll have a slight negative modifier, but they'll get a chance. So these guys here, it's this guy's turn. He's got his assassins. They move 6. So they'll be able to move kind of where they'll be able to see those fighters. So I'm going to go ahead and move this guy up 6. This guy can come out 6. And they can both see that fighter, although some of these trees are in the way. So they got a +1 bonus for the cover. So those fighters are pretty... there's a good reason for the fighters to stay in fighter mode sometimes, because they're very hard to hit. And each of those fighters has a pretty high defense. I'm just double checking it. So in fighter mode, their defense is 9 because of their speed and everything else. So both those guys are going to shoot at them. They're going to spend their extra actions. They never came into the line of sight really of those guys over there. So those guys didn't get their attack. They might be able to save that Overwatch next turn and take advantage of it since the tokens are there. The only thing that they're going to have, their missiles have a 24-inch range. So this one is just out of range for his missiles, and this one is out of range for his missiles too. So they have their paired magnetic accelerators, their guns on their arms, which they can also try, so they're out at the 24-inch range. So the base range for direct fire weapons is in segments. Their base range is 8, so anything from 1 to 8 uses a D10. Anything from 9 to 16 uses a D12. Excuse me. Anything from 1 to 8 uses a D12. From 9 to 16 uses a D8. From 17 to 24 uses a D10, then a D12, then a D10, then a D8. Since they are from 25 to 32 range, the fourth bracket, they get to use a D6. Their gunnery is only 2. So they can try. They're going to need a 6 to get just an 8. And then what they'll do is, because they can't hit normally, they'll have, if they roll a 6, they can re-roll it, and if they get another 6, they can add 1 to it. As long as you keep on adding, rolling the highest die of whatever it is, you get to add to it again and again and again. So they're going to take a couple shots from each one at this first fighter, and they both miss. So these guys almost got wiped out, and really these guys came out unscathed for the beginning of the turn. But now these fighters are surrounded, and those guys are out of the loop for a little bit. So we'll roll initiative for the next turn. Those guys have 6, these guys have 4. So these guys have the initiative again. So now they got to make a choice. Those guys, they might as well leave them there. So these guys up here, they can try to fly around and get out of view. Or they can take out those tanks and then try to fly over here so they can get out of the view. But if they do, they're going to probably wind up getting shot at these, and the fighters are obviously going to get a nice shot at them too. Do they want to take out the tanks on their way? Sure, why not? So they got to move at least 6 on their first move. So, which is half their 12 of what they can move. They each have a gunnery of 2. Again, the tanks had boosted, and that still counts until their next activation. So they're, what was it, 9? Yes, 9 is what they need to be hit. So these guys need 7s. That point blank range, they might as well not save their missiles and use their guns, because all they need to do is 1 shot. So again, they need 7 or higher. So that one hit, and the other one missed. So one of them hit. And let's see if he'll do anything. If he does full damage, well, it doesn't really matter. So one of these tanks is going to be dead. What they can do is they can boost their defenses. Now, what they do is they're basically borrowing from actions from this turn, trying to evade the attack and everything. And usually it's supposed to be declared beforehand. I forgot because I'm trying to do this all myself. So both of these guys are going to try to, I'm going to take off these boosted, I'm going to move them out of the way and put distress markers. So what they're basically saying are pin markers. So what they're using is they're using both actions to boost their defenses to try to not get hit by those planes. So instead of a 9, if they use 2 actions, that boosts it up to an 11. So now these guys, instead of a 9, they'll need an 11. So they need 9 on each die. I'll re-roll these. 1 hit. Armor does nothing. So one of these is still gone. So what that means is that this guy moved as much as he could, trying not to get hit. And in that process, he used all of his actions. So he's not going to be able to move or fire or anything. He was just trying to prevent himself from getting wiped out during his turn. So now it's these guys' turn. These guys have already activated. They just got to use their secondary movement. So they're going to both come down here and fly down into this area over here. So they're going to get to be able to do something. And what I want to do is just leave those guys off to the side and try to concentrate fire on these fighters. So these guys are just going to, this guy can see him. So he's not going to move. That way he can use both actions to attack. This guy had to come out from behind the building. So this guy gets 2 attacks, but he's also going to stay out there where those guys can possibly take a shot at him if they can move far enough. Which one of them will, but he won't be in range, so that's fine. He'll take both actions. So this guy, they're in range for missiles and guns. They're within 16 range. So remember, I didn't say it very well, but 1 to 8 would be a D12. 9 to 16 is going to be a D10. So he gets a D10 to attack. So he's going to attack with his guns. Again, the fighters have a 9 to be hit, and he gets 1 attack, and his gunnery is a 2. So he needs a 7, which he misses. This guy's going to shoot. He can't shoot the same weapon system more than once unless it has something that we call rapid fire. So he'll shoot his arm cannons once, and then he's going to shoot his missiles. So he's too far out of range for the D10 because he's at 21 inches. So he gets a D8. So again, he needs a 9 to hit him, so he needs a 7 or 8. So he misses with that. And the missiles he's going to fire too. So his missiles, they shoot in groups of 5. So he's going to shoot 5 missiles. And he needs an 8 or 7 or 8. And 1 hit. Okay, so these have anti-missile where they can shoot it down, but he's out of the range or out of the arc of their normal anti-missile, so they can't do anything about that. He probably could have dodged or something, but I've skipped that since I was doing this all myself. Sometimes you'll miss some things like that. So he got hit with 1 missile. His armor is a 5. He'll take full damage, and the missiles only do 4. So he'll take 4 damage, and that's number 2. Okay? So now these guys, they're going to have to get in the action. So they're going to have to double time it or do something to get in there before the fighters get killed. So this guy's going to double time it, book it. He's going to come over here, get some cover between those buildings. This guy should come over here. This guy's a little bit slower. He'll come out here. They double move, so I take all their markers off from last turn, from their last activation. So none of them will have Overwatch or anything, but they'll be able to do some damage. So now all the rest of these guys get a move. So this tank that's almost dead is going to take. Does his gun have rapid fire? No, but he's also got a machine gun. So he's basically going to shoot the same fighter. He's in short range for the cannon and medium range for his other thing. So short range is a D12, and then medium range will be a D10. Gunnery 2, he needs to hit a 9, so he needs 7. So he hit with this cannon, and the machine gun also hit. So I didn't even try to dodge for that guy, probably could have, but he'll take 6 more. So now he's taking 10 damage, so he's got 4 left before he goes kablooey. And then I take off this guy's tokens from his last activation. And then these fighters. Okay, so he's going to turn. He's coming up here. This guy's going to turn. Remember, they can turn up to 90 degrees before on their first move. So they both moved. And they're both well in range for their missiles. They shoot 4 missiles at a time. Missiles, regardless of the range, have a D8 as long as you're within the maximum range of it. He's going to shoot 4 missiles at him. He's going to shoot 4 missiles at this guy. So with D8s, they need a 7. So 1 hit on him, and 1 hit on the other guy. So definitely, he's going to want to boost his defenses. I should have done that beforehand. You have to do it before the dice are rolled. And since I didn't, I'm just going to count it as if he didn't or it failed. So this guy takes 4 more. That's it for him. He's destroyed. This guy will take 4 damage. Let me roll for his armor real quick. Yeah, his armor didn't do any good. They don't have very heavy armor. So now these guys have to make their secondary move. And since they're right in the corner, I could fly off and then come back. In fact, he's going to wind up flying off anyways, so I might as well fly off this turn over here. That means in a couple turns he'll be able to come back. This guy can come over here, and then he can turn and he can try to stay on the table, so he doesn't have to worry about coming back in a couple turns. So I'm going to put this guy over here because he's not dead, he's just off the table for now, and in a couple turns he'll come back. And the reason I do that is because fighters, a lot of games, if they fly off the board, it says, oh well, they're dead, that's it. That's, in my opinion, kind of stupid, because obviously they're going to come back. As long as they weren't distressed or pinned down where they've used their other actions where they're in trouble, they'll be able to come back. They just turn around and be back in a turn or two. So he'll be back, yeah, in a couple turns. So at this point, normally I would roll initiative again, and we keep on going. These guys have lost a fighter. These guys have a tank dead and a tank heavily damaged. These guys moving up. So it kind of gives you an idea of the flavor of where we're at the game. I'm going to break it here for part 1, and then what I'll do is I'll keep on playing and put it up as part 2 for the rest of this game. So I'm going to